We are live.
What's up, everybody? It is Mike Sedini with another special WTTA podcast, and today I'm joined with my co-host Kevin Barry. How you doing, Kevin?
Pretty good.
And we have a special guest today, somebody that I think is very important in the 2A community. I've known you. I met you, I think, at the Solutionary Summit in Miami, right? Maja Solutionary Summit. Uh, would you call yourself just a 2A advocate? Would that be the best way to describe you?
Sure. Yeah. I think that's a solid adjective.
I mean, you're much more than that, but let's just say you are a 2A advocate and you are an author and your name is Heather Allen, and I'm happy to have you on the show today.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So why don't we get into kind of your background, your history with firearms? Because I think it's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. I was born and raised Southern California, and my dad, I knew he had a gun, but it was always like, it's under the bed, don't touch it. It's in the closet, don't touch it. And it wasn't until I met my husband, Tyler. He was in the Navy, and he was sheriff for LA County. So he's the one who got me into shooting. And I remember he was with the Navy Reserves, and he'd be gone in Virginia for like 3 weeks. And I had a little baby at the time. And I remember thinking, like, if anything happens, I know it's a long wait time for the cops to actually come respond. So I was like, maybe I should learn how to use this. So he taught me, got really into it. And then I started working for the California Rifle and Pistol Association. That's kind of what catapulted the whole like advocacy part of me. But I learned a lot about not just Second Amendment rights, but constitutional rights in general, just how quickly they can be lost, especially in California. And then I had a lot of people ask me, like, where do you work? Can you teach me how to shoot? Mostly women. And I got to a point where it was like friends of friends of friends, like strangers calling, say, you taught so-and-so, can you teach me how to shoot? And I just kind of thought to myself, I think there's a need for typically like female instructors in Southern California. So I started instructing. And then we moved to from one surf city to another surf city, North Carolina. And I jumped right into it. It's much more easy to get a concealed carry permit in North Carolina. So I started teaching. I went to a bunch of meetings where some government officials try to kind of get involved with concealed carry, make it harder. So I gave a little speech and then was immediately asked to join the North Carolina Concealed Carry Instructor Association. So I'm on the board of that. I've got really fun ladies' night, got one tonight, and teach the concealed carry and basic handgun lessons.
That's cool. As somebody who grew up in California and New Jersey, I always tell people I grew up in the worst places for firearms. Just absolutely, and when you say like, hey, I'm from California, or I say I'm from New Jersey, and you're talking to a 2A person, it's always like this kind of like, oh, let's go back. Yeah. Like people are like, how did you do that? So when you were growing up in like California, was there ever an issue with guns when you maybe you were little and did, how does that transition work? Or were you always just like, okay, like,
no, I tell people like my dad taught me how to surf. So like equally as important, like, so we were just always at the beach and just never really thought about it. And then it was really when I started working for the California Rifle Pistol Association, I realized how important it is. And especially with my husband working for the sheriff's department, it's like you do hear about people needing help and there's a long time span. So it's a good skill to know, that's for sure. And I enjoy teaching other people, make them feel.
Yeah, I didn't. So for me, like as a product of nepotism and someone who grew up, like the areas I grew up in, like people didn't hunt. You know what I mean? They just didn't have access to firearms like that. Or it's just mostly like gangster wannabes and the cops, right? Like those are the people that you saw were armed, or maybe real gangsters, right? But it just wasn't something that you came across a lot. And when I got into the firearms industry, I still don't think I really understood the importance of like the Constitution and freedom. Mm-hmm. I had no issue with guns. Like guns was never a problem for me. I always looked at a gun as a tool, even when I had really no knowledge of guns. But I remember when it kind of clicked, where I'm like, oh, this is it. This is why people get so emotional. Like, you start to understand that You know, you can be a fan of guns, or you can own a gun and not have an issue with a gun, but maybe you don't understand the importance of the second. And it's usually, like, when I call it the 2A community, it's those that love firearms and then also understand the importance of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's always interesting when it clicks for people. Some people are born with it, right? They're born into a family where that's like beaten into their head, and they come up like that, and then others figure it out. And it's always kind of interesting to see that journey.
Yeah. And then when you get into the 2A community and everyone's so nice, got their arms open, they're so supportive, it makes it pretty easy as well.
Yeah, 100%. So I want to hear more about your teaching. Like, what have you found? What are some of the coolest stories about teaching people about firearms, especially particularly women, right? There was a time, and I will say this was real. There was a time when women in the firearms industry in the 2A community were just the women who were standing behind their husbands at the gun shows.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy, right? Like, we barely had any women that worked in the industry. And now it's come so far that it's one of the fastest growing, biggest demographics. So it's been really interesting to see that.
Yeah, I think it's Black women. They've been the biggest new gun owners, I think, over like 5 years now. So it's really great to see. Yeah, I did have a class. Typically, it's when something happens and then I get a phone call, but there was a really cute, very like girly boutique. They had a strange man come in, just like kind of weird feeling. Nothing happened, but they just got that weird vibe. And they're like, you know what? Can you come teach a concealed carry in the shop? And it was the cutest class I've ever taught. We took little breaks and the girls were shopping and stuff, but I had all the guns and everything, just the fake ammo. And that was a really fun class. Everyone was just really excited, asking good questions. And that was Chill Pretty in North Carolina, Surf City.
Yeah. So what is the biggest issues you see when you have a new shooter come into your class, or you're teaching them? Like, there was a time when you get into these like stereotypes that women weren't strong enough to operate certain types of firearms, or they only wanted pink ones. I remember that phase too, right? And then it was like a slap in the face for a lot of women. They were just like, God, it's insulting. I don't care about pink, that type of thing. So, like, what are some of the issues that you see when someone finally comes through that's like, I'm ready to make this leap and actually learn how to use this tool?
I've had women come literally shaking and tears coming down their faces. And typically when they leave, they're like, that was so fun. Can I come back and do this again? And so that's great to see. But I think just maybe what they see in movies where they're shooting, it's just like this massive explosion with like a little handgun and stuff. So they just think it's going to be, like pushing them back. But, if they're really scared, obviously just start with a 22, maybe 380, work your way up. 9mm, but it's really great with ladies' night. So I do it once a month, first Thursday, and we get everyone from like very first time shooters, so then they can see other women who are a little bit more proficient shoot. Okay, if they could do that, I can do that. So that's been good to see.
Yeah. So when I owned Eagle Imports, which was an importer of firearms, and one of our biggest lines was Bersa, we had a lot of female clients because the Bersa Thunder 380 was a really good starter gun for most people because they could control it. There's a lot of safety features on it that seemed to attract a lot of people. I remember sitting at gun shows and I'm just like, hey, do you have grandkids, or you have kids in the house, or things like that? And, I'd show them all the different features that it had a integral locking system. It had a magazine disconnect. There was ways that I could sell that gun, especially to a female audience, which is really cool. But how do you feel about that? How do you feel about the whole myth? Because there's a lot of people out there that are like, yo, a 380 or a 22, that's worthless. You need stopping power. And I've always used to ask people like, hey, have you ever been shot with a 380 or 22? Like, like, I've never really bought into the whole, like, you need to have a hand cannon. You know what I mean? I've always just been like, self-defense is self-defense. And if my wife decides to shoot somebody that's attacking her 6 times center mass with a 380, I think it's going to get the job done in 9 out of 10 cases, right? There's always hey, he was hocked up on something and maybe powerfully ran through that. But I mean, he could probably do that with a 9 too. So,
yeah. I think it was Riverside County, California. They wouldn't even let you put a 22 on your concealed carry permit. I think they've since changed that, but I thought that was kind of interesting. They're like, oh, it's not really that lethal of a round. So if you want to stop someone, you got to use something bigger. But since then, they've switched that back. But if that's what women are comfortable with, you could even get a revolver with the 22 that holds 10 rounds. So if that's what they're comfortable with, then I fully support them carrying a 22.
Yeah, I have a funny story about a 22. I remember one time I was working at a gun show, and Bursa had a Thunder 380. They had a Thunder 22. They had a Thunder 9. You know, it went right up from the 22. And this lady she really liked the feel of the Thunder 380 and the 22. They're in the same frame, right? It's just different caliber. The 9 was a little bit different, but I remember like I was showing her the 380, and her boyfriend walked up, and he's like, "Put that down. I will never let you shoot a 380. I would never let you shoot a 22 for self-defense." And I remember I was like, "Have you ever been shot with a 22?" And he literally goes, "Yeah, I was shot with a 22 once." He's like, "It hit me in the elbow, and it went up my neck and came out here." And I was like, "Okay, that doesn't seem pleasant." Like, I don't know what his point was, but I was like, what happens if you get shot with that 6 times? Like, once again, this is like this illogical thinking. But
only 5, but
yeah, right. Like, I don't know. It's just, it's fascinating. I guess I'm too close to it. And I came into the industry with no like bias. You know what I mean? I didn't have someone tell me, "Oh no, that's worthless in a self-defense situation." I was just like, it's a gun and it goes off, and bullets can do anything. I mean, they can skip, they can go through your neck, they can come out your elbow, whatever. But it's just more importantly that we learn to use them responsibly. I want to talk a little bit about the book, because you sent me a book, and I'm not going to lie. When people tell me they've written a book and they're sending it to me, or people tell me they have a rap song, or they want me to hear their mixtape or things like that, I get nervous. And I'll tell you,
that's what I get
because
my rap song.
No, I get nervous because I'm always like, what if I hate it? And I always have trouble kind of faking my way through this. But this book showed up, and I purposely didn't even look into. I just was like, I want to be pleasantly surprised, or I'm going to be like, oh God. And you sent me the book, and it was bookmarked to New Jersey, which was pretty awesome. I love that. But then I started flipping through this book, and the book, I have it right here. It's 50 states in my sights, right? And I was like, oh my God, this is a book that I wish I've had for the last 20 years. Because when people find out I work in firearms, well, when I'm traveling on the road, I meet someone at a bar or something like that, they always ask me what the state law is, as if I'm like an encyclopedia and I know it. And you captured that, like, which is awesome. The mixtape was good. I was like, oh my God. So tell us a little about this book and how you decided to write it, and kind of what it's about, right?
Sure. I was feeling pretty down. I just lost both my parents, and I remember thinking, like, I need some joy back in my life. I was like, I knew I wanted to do something really fun. I was like, what do I love to do? I love to travel. I love to shoot. Love America. So I kind of put all those together, and I was on a quest. I had only shot in 4 states prior, so I did the rest, and it took me about 3 years. It's funny. So like I said, I was from California, a lot of people moving out of California. So I'd say like half the time I was just staying with friends who had also moved out of California. Like, hey, you want to go shoot with me? And, I had friends in Indiana, Florida, Oklahoma, you name it. So that was really fun to kind of catch up with everybody. But yeah, I learned a lot about other states' laws and their ranges, how beautiful some of the states' ranges are. Some of them are totally free. Never heard that concept in Southern California. I was like, what? This beautiful range is free? Like, anyone can just come and shoot. So yeah, it was a blast, and I'm glad you enjoyed it. And I'm glad I got to talk about Walk the Talk America in the book. So I appreciate that.
No, and I appreciate that too. And what I really love about the book is like you don't overkill it. Like you basically, I mean, the book's 200, I think it was 202 pages when I looked. And basically every state you you have a little anecdote, like you tell a little story, you have a photo of you on a range or wherever it was that you were shooting, and then you kind of just break down the laws. I guess, what was there a state where you were like, get me out of here if you don't fail me now? Or is there any?
It was really to shoot in New Jersey, of course. And my two girlfriends, they couldn't even shoot with me. We just kind of had to make friends really fast because I didn't have the correct ID. Even though I had like the gun and ammunition, everything I needed, they're like, oh no, you have to have this even to have a lane. And so this couple were just like, oh, come jump in with us. And they let me use their ammo and everything. I was like, let me pay you. So I sent them a book. I put them in the book. So that was fun. But yeah, my friends were like, what the heck? Because they were military wives. And I think other states are kind of supposed to give them a little bit of credit because, if you don't have the correct New Jersey ID, which they didn't have, then they're like, oh, this is messed up. But yeah, we're kind of like, okay, we shot, let's go. We went to Pennsylvania. That was a fun time too, but yeah.
Yeah, I apologize for New Jersey. I've done that a lot in my life. It's kind of crazy. I probably could have bet on that. Like what you were gonna say. It's insane, the laws, the draconian laws when it comes to firearms with the state of New Jersey. You would think that we don't have a gun issue at all. Like it's the perfect state because we've solved gun issues, but we have some of the worst gun crime in the United States. And they really, really make it tough on people who just want to go to the range, or law-abiding citizens, or people that just even want. I mean, I know right now in New Jersey, a lot has been uncovered with, basically their racism and how they've been denying permits to all kinds of different walks of life that, should be able to defend themselves. So they're going to have to answer for that. But yeah, that state is definitely tough. And, it's tough for me because it's where, I grew up, and it's where all my family's from. It's where my business was from. And you never want to abandon those types of places, especially when you fight for gun rights and gun laws to be changed there. But it just makes it hard. So that's why I appreciate people like the Tony Simons of the world that are fighting the good fight in New Jersey. Yeah. But, I apologize for the state.
That's how I feel with California too. It's like I come from there and then I go to North Carolina where, the first week I was like, you can do that here? Like you that's allowed? I like skipped out with like a 34 round magazine, like just put cash on the register, skipped out, about 2 guns in one day. And yeah, just, could walk out the shop with it. I didn't have to wait 10 days for it. And I actually got my FFL. I could have a home-based FFL. So that's been really fun too.
Yeah, no, that's having an FFL in a state where you can do it. And it's really not a huge issue. Makes life easier, right? It just does. I think the average person would be like, well, why does anyone need that? But it's just like when you're in the community, when you're into firearms and you're kind of an influencer and a trainer, a firearms instructor, it just makes your life easier that you can kind of log your own books and have guns shipped to you and ship guns to other FFLs, which is pretty cool. But what was your favorite range, that you came across in the US?
Favorite range? Well, Idaho was beautiful. It was the first time that I did just walk and was like, okay, like where do I show my ID? How much is it? And it was just totally free, but it was just covered in like beautiful pine trees. Hawaii, that was a pretty cool place because typically the state's pretty anti-gun, but there's this little guy with a massive sign. It's just like, shoot real guns here. And I love following it's Waikiki Gun Club. They always have like really fun pictures that they're posting. There's just so like South Dakota, I was impressed with their ranges, and Iowa. When I Googled where I could go shoot, there was just endless amounts of free ranges in Iowa. So they're really lucky Iowans. Yeah, all of them were pretty nice. There was a few that were, I think in Washington, it was a little run down and it was so expensive. And then we went straight to the free range in Idaho. So it was kind of like night and day. But yes, sometimes you never know what the range is. Like, would I not wish this bathroom on my worst enemy? Or is it going to be like super clean? So you just never know.
Yeah. And how do you pick those ranges? Like how did you map this out? Or did you was it kind of like, hey, if I hit this state, I'm just going to throw a dart.
We checked a lot of boxes when we drove. I think it took us 5 days from California to North Carolina. And there was only one time in New Mexico. Definitely want to go back and explore more of New Mexico. But I pretty much just like got out of the truck and shot in New Mexico. So I didn't go to a range. But for the most part, it's like, okay, where are we going to be? Kind of look up what the ranges were nearby. And then if I went to some friends, not a lot of my friends were into it. So sometimes it was their husbands like, oh, you got to go to Tim's in Indiana. So it was nice having a little bit of help that way.
So what, like the concept, right? Like, how did you tie it all together? Or did it just come to you like, hey, like I got this idea, like this is what I want to do?
Yeah, it was kind of pursuit of happiness. Just kind of had a rough go for 4 years. Like I lost my dad 2016 presidential election, my mom 2020 presidential election. So I'm like, please Jesus, don't let this be like some family trend here. So I'm hoping to survive this year. But I couldn't think of the name. I was like, all right, I'm going to all these states. And I remember talking to my 94-year-old grandma, and she was listening, and she goes, oh, it sounds like you've got 50 states in your sights. And I was like, what did you say? And I like wrote it down. And then she passed away like a week later. But so every time I kind of looked.
Jesus. Now I know why you're saying that. I mean, I'm not laughing.
But grandma, so that was nice that she helped me out with that. But I couldn't think of what to name. It was like Heather Shoots Up America. Like it all turned out bad the way I was thinking. But yeah, she had the perfect title for me.
And your husband gave you full support of this? Like,
yeah.
You're just like, yeah, I just want to write this book.
Yeah. Yeah, he helped me in a few states. So
that's cool. What?
Daughter, I write about how she totally like outshot me in Wyoming. So that was like a proud moment, but at the same time, I was like, "What? Give me that gun!" And like try to go shoot the targets better than her. But
I have so many questions about like being that you just kind of did this, because this is something I would never do. Like just me as a person, like it just seems exhausting. And like, did you have any really negative experiences, or were you ever on the range at a time where you're just like, there's a guy in a bay next to me that, you know, just something that's negative right now? Everything's not always positive when it comes to ranges.
Well, when you say that, so my really good friend Reagan, she went with me. We started in Washington and then went through Idaho and Montana. And when we were at the wide open free range in Idaho, it was just the two of us. And then a man came. And for me, I mean, for us, it's no big deal. Another person's going to shoot next to us. But we shot and we got in the car, and she was like, oh my gosh, I was so freaked out. Like, what if he just started shooting at? I was picturing like climbing up this mountain with the trees. And I looked at her. I was like, oh my, just the two different thinking of like one person that we don't know shooting next to us. Like, it was just interesting to hear her perspective. But yeah, you're not around it. I guess that's just how you can feel.
Yeah, the range can be a very intimidating place, especially when you take someone there for the first time. You know what I mean? It really can be. Sometimes people underestimate like how loud it can be in there. And there are times when you're just, I mean, I know there's been times for me, and I've been around it pretty much for 30 years, where someone brings just like the ultimate hand cannon, right? Like the Smith & Wesson 500. Yeah. And you're just like, oh my God, my teeth are rattling, you know? So there's got to, I'm sure you had some interesting experiences. What do you mainly shoot when you did this? Like, what was the?
I love my CZ. I actually have like a bracelet of it, but the CZ 75B. I've done a few USPSA matches with that one, and there's something about it. I just really like that gun.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. What's the best gun community that you've seen? You told a story about New Jersey. You told us how kind the people were, and they were like, hey, you can jump in our bay, you can use our ammo. And that's generally, I think, the misconception of gun people. Like the greatest thing about gun people is like, when you're in, right? Like we're the people that are just like, hey, shoot this or try this, right? We're on the range and we're like all talking to each other, like, what you got in your bag?
Yeah. You take new people and they're like, oh man, and people are really friendly here.
Yeah. Yeah. Like was there a particular community that you thought just really stood out?
Maybe just because I'm from California California, but being so tight knit there with all the different gun shops. But there was a kid in my daughter's class, and his mom passed away, and the dad reached out and said, oh, he's taken an interest in shooting, and like all the shops just helped him out with like cute little hats and shirts and little bags and stuff. And so I don't know, I just thought that was so nice. And then they would always donate to little like auctions for the private schools. So that was like the biggest basket, like, oh, bid on this, you could win a gun. People are kind of like, wait, what's here? So
Did you tell every range owner that you were going to add them in this book, or how did that work out?
yeah, I think it was in Mississippi. Mississippi was like, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard. And they gave me the shirt, and I think I had it on in the book and stuff, but they were pretty pumped in Mississippi.
Did you have anybody that was kind of like leery? Sometimes we tend to, when it comes to media of any sort, get a little suspicious, right? It's like, what is she going to write? Is she going to, or, it's like a bad Yelp review. I mean, it could be.
I was always really excited, like, oh, check out what I'm doing. And so I think maybe that excitement, I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool. So I still need to send some to some of the ranges. I remember in Rhode Island, it was the day I shot there. They're like, oh, our governor just signed the max capacity for magazines. So we can only shoot 10 rounds there. And I was like, oh, coming from a Californian, it's just when you lose the right, it takes so long, and it's so hard to get that right back. So we're kind of commiserating about that.
Yeah, that seems like such a goofy thing. And, you always hear stories of certain ranges that have these little rules, right? Like you're not allowed to go on the range unless you're accompanied with a friend or things like that. Is there anything that you ran into that was just a little odd, or, obviously that...
Just that one in New Jersey. And then
there it is again.
It was Connecticut. Luckily, I had my own gun and my own ammo. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to check that one off my list, because you needed the card and everything like that. But for the most part, everyone was real nice about it.
Yeah, man. Could you imagine if you went somewhere and you missed it, and then you had to go back?
Oh.
Yeah, that would seem kind of annoying. Yeah, it's kind of amazing that you hit it. Now, did you prep before? Okay, we're going to the state, and I'm going to try to figure out as much as I can?
Yes. Yeah, I would do that. And then I had a friend who moved to Kansas. And so luckily it was right on the border of Missouri. So I got to do that and then kind of go up. But yeah, I definitely had to make sure I was following their laws. Didn't want to get pulled over. And especially New Jersey, I know Shaneen Allen. I'm sure you've heard about her.
Do you know my history of Shaneen Allen?
Oh yeah. I mean, like the unsafe lane change, like that's what it was. And she got potentially 42 months of prison time for having her firearm with her. So
yeah, I was instrumental in helping her get off in that case, because I got roped into it. The NRA I don't know if you know this history with me and Shaneen. Shaneen and I are friends. Yeah. So for those listening who don't know who Shaneen Allen is a single mother from Philadelphia who lived in an underprivileged, underserved neighborhood, been robbed twice, went to get a gun permit, did everything legal, ended up buying a Bersa. That's how I got roped into it, right? Because not only did she get in trouble in New Jersey, but she had bought one of my guns. So the NRA had contacted me and told me about Shaneen's story. And they said, hey, would you be interested in helping her, or at least advocating for her? Especially since you're the manufacturer, which put me in a very, like, what was I going to say? No, like that so basically, I started to help. I raised some money for Shaneen. We donated a lot of money for Shaneen's legal defense, and her life became hell. She basically was driving through New Jersey. Now, Shaneen's not the only one that this has happened to, especially during Hurricane Sandy. This happened to a lot of people from like North Carolina. People would run to try to help New Jersey in a time of need when we got smashed by the hurricane, and they didn't realize like we have these goofy gun laws, and in their world everything's legal and they're doing everything right. And so Shaneen had one of those situations where she lived in Philly, but she worked in Atlantic City. And for those of you who know the the East Coast. They're right next to each other. She thought there was reciprocity, didn't fully understand that, and kind of drove into New Jersey. It was on the turnpike and got pulled over by some state troopers. And it almost becomes comical at that point. Like, not only did Shanine have the Versa Thunder 380 in her glove box that was locked, but she had the internal locking system on the firearm locked. So like when the cops and she was honest, right? And the cop said, "Hey, like, do you have any firearms in the car?" She said, "Yes, I have a permit. I'm on my way to work," because she was a nurse and she would get off really late. And the cop said, "Oh, okay, like, let me see the firearm." So she gives the cops the firearm. They didn't even they were trying to figure out the gun. They were trying to rack the slide and everything like that. And it was a paperweight at that point because she had turned the key and she's cuffed. She's in the back of the car trying to tell them, "Hey," yeah, like they couldn't even figure that part out. But at one point, like, basically, I think one of the cops said to her, "Hey, if you'd have just said you didn't have a gun, we wouldn't even looked." Which, she was trying to do the right thing. She was trying to be honest, and it just made her life a living hell. And when that charge came down, it cost her career. She couldn't even work as a nurse, because she was, spent some time in jail and was looking at this felony, and it was just like a nightmare. And I did a lot. I remember doing if you go on YouTube and you type in Shanine Allen, a Crusader for Change, there's a video of me coming to her defense. And the NRA used that video a lot. And I remember having a meeting with my office saying, I may have just gotten us kicked out of New Jersey. Because I let it fly. I mean, I had a lot to say about the state at that time, just because I was like, hey, we're throwing Shanine Allen in jail. That means that Camden, all the crime in Camden and Trenton and all, Newark, I guess we've solved all that gun crime. But yeah, so Shanine Allen was one of those cases that I point to when I talk about the draconian gun laws of New Jersey. It ruined her life.
Well, I talk about her and I talk about you in every one of my concealed carry classes. So now I can intertwine them. But it's interesting because I have kind of preset notes about Walk the Talk America. But even with that, when I talk about it, people are still taking notes. So, and that's like one of the few things that people actually want to remember.
Yeah.
But
that's cool. And it's interesting because at that time, there was no Walk the Talk America. I was just simply the president of Eagle Imports. And
are you guys there? Oh, okay.
I can see you. Mike doesn't look like he made it back yet.
Oh, shoot. Hopefully pick right back up.
Yeah, hopefully he can come back in.
That's the worst.
That is.
all right, everybody back?
Yeah, we're still live, so just pick back up.
Okay, so at that time, it's always an interesting thing. Is like that was the first attempt at any kind of advocacy that I did for the industry. with Shanine's story. So yeah, it's kind of cool that, you know, you now have that WTTA and Shanine Allen example. But I remember when we presented, because they confiscated her gun, and then she ended up beating the charges. It took a long time. It took a lot of resources and a lot of money, and she ended up getting it expunged and moved on with her life. But I remember when we presented her with a brand new gun, you know, we gave her a new gun, and it was really cool. But Shanine she's a great person, and you know, a lot of people would, you know, say, oh, well, you know, that's why it's so important to understand the laws. And this is what kind of tying your book back into it is really cool, that you break down the laws of each state and what you have to do. But it's a simple mistake that Shanine made that took someone who is innocent trying to do the right thing, and we made her like a hardened criminal.
Yeah.
You know, Shanine's not out there doing anything wrong with a firearm. As a matter of fact, like, she was almost overly cautious. You know, like I said, have that integral locking system on when your gun is in a glove box, in a locked glove box. Like, I would never recommend anybody who in a self-defense situation carry it like that. You know what I mean? Because that's a two key step. Yeah. So it just shows you that she had no ill will and she was just going to work. But yeah, Shanine's a good person. So I'm kind of glad you touched on that. And then, like I said, if you get a chance, check out that video.
I will.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. The NRA actually flew out to Dallas. I was at I think I was at some sort of distributor show at the time to interview me. And I really thought I did it. Like, I really went hard on New Jersey. I was like, I'm sure the ATF is going to be knocking at our door and people are going to make our life miserable, but it didn't happen. So we were able to help her.
I know, I heard so many stories about the ATF when they knocked on my door. I was like, my dog's really friendly. It's the most friendly dog ever. But dogs survive.
You know, we give the ATF a bad rap just in general as the community, but I will say this, like, I'm here to say, like, as somebody who worked hand in hand with the ATF all the time in New Jersey, and believe me, they came to my door more than they came to the doors of other manufacturers in more freedom-loving states, such as Nevada. I found that out later when I would talk to different presidents of different companies. I'm like, how many times does the ATF show up at your door? And they're like, once a year. And I'm like, once a year, that's it. But I will say this, just like the military, just like the police, right? You're going to have people that are pro-gun in there, and they're going to have those jobs, and they're going to be big fans of the firearms industry as a whole. So we can't always lump them all together as these bad people. We see these videos and we get emotional when we see an ATF agent showing up at somebody's door doing dumb shit, right? Like, that I get that part, but we also have to understand that we can't just broadly stroke the whole ATF as like one monolithic group that has the same feeling about everything. Every single ATF agent I ever worked with, when they would do audits of my company, was pleasant to work with, and you know, never gave me any issues. So I just want, you know, listeners to understand that there's two sides to that coin, and it's not all bad. Now, I would say stay in compliance, and
Right.
I wouldn't tell them to F off. And I think you're smart to tell them about your dog and all this stuff. It is the United States government, and we all know that they can be some of the biggest gangsters on the planet if they want to be and make your life miserable. But you got to pick and choose your battles. So
Why
you know.
they have that SHOT Show, that to me is like, ugh. But they're
when
there.
you see the booth at SHOT Show that they have,
Man, they're just asking for it there. But all the shirts that walk by, I don't know. Kind of makes you
yeah, one of my favorite scenes there was a show called Ollie G. I don't know if you guys know that show, but basically Sacha Baron Cohen used to like disguise himself and trick people. And I remember he had an ATF agent on a show one time, and he goes, ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. And the guy goes, yep. And he goes, what else do you sell? Like, he's like, no, that's not how that works. But so we're kind of coming up on the end of the show here. I'm glad that you were able to drop in. I know it was kind of short notice. We just talked about it, but I really wanted to kind of put some focus on this book. Is there anything, any anecdotal story you want to add to this? Like, where can people get this book? I really, I mean it from the bottom of my heart. When I got the book, I was very relieved because I have ADD too. Like I self-diagnosed, right? Jake will probably be yelling at me, like, don't define yourself like that. But it's such a good read. It's an easy read. Like you know, it moves very fast and it's just really cool. And you can skip forward, go back, like check out the, you know, once you get these ideas. So I just want to give you your platform right now. I want to give you your flowers for the book. I really think it's a good book, and I think everybody should have it. It's like one of those reference books, in my opinion. Like if you're in the 2A community and we all need to support each other, I think everybody should have a copy of this on deck, so they can at least use it as a reference.
Well, I just updated it. So you have extremely up-to-date information in that book. I'll probably update it about every 6 months if I need to. Yeah, you can find it on Amazon. And the best part about 50 States in My Sights is that September is Suicide Awareness Month. So every book that is sold, I'll definitely be donating at least $1, maybe more, to Walk the Talk America, because it is so important. And it's just, I'm so happy that you have the organization, because it's sad and crazy how many people you'll meet and they have, you know, someone in their family that it just a week ago, I was talking to someone. So I'm really glad that I can have the organization to tell people about. But yeah, so you can find it on Amazon. It's in 6 shops. There's some in California, some in North Carolina, it's a brick and mortar. So that's kind of fun to, sometimes they call and they say, we're out of your books. You got to come give some more. But yeah, Amazon.com, 50 States in My Sights. And again, proceeds will be going to Walk the Talk America for the month of September.
No, and I really appreciate that. And I just want to add too, if you have a gun shop or a range and you're hearing this, this is definitely a book that you can have right by the counter. I think people would buy this book because, like I said, it really is fascinating. And if I had $1 for every time someone was like, I live in Wyoming, what's the law there? And I'm like, why?
Not too bad.
Yeah, so we have one last question we like to ask our guests, and I want to ask you this: like, how do you tend to your mental health?
I have a horse. I really feel like horseback riding for me, just being out there in the fresh air, and there's definitely a bond there. So that's one way. Shooting is, I think that blows off some steam. That helps a lot too, and just being with my family. But the first thing that came to mind is just horseback riding.
It's interesting. I could see that. Everybody I've always known that's owned a horse, I was like, man, that's got to be tough on your mental health, because not only do you fall in love with those damn things, you know, they're like mythical creatures to me, like, you know what I mean? But like, wow, the upkeep, like taking care of them is
totally worth it. And they live a long time. A healthy horse will live about 30 years, and mine's only 8, so I got some time.
No, that's really good. I like I said, I have appreciation for horses. Like I said, there's something really magical about them. And I remember when my mother had a horse, and I remember when she lost her horse, like it was worse than losing a human. Like, you know what I mean? So you can become very attached to them. But no, that's awesome to hear. I love that you love shooting too. I think that that's something that's really overlooked, the therapeutic benefits of getting to the range. It's counterintuitive for most people that aren't gun people. You know, they think, oh, why would you do that? Why would you go out there and be around this loud, noisy thing at the range? And I always tell people all the time, no, most people go out there and that's when they're calm, because they're focused and they're breathing right, and they're trying to accomplish something, and are not thinking about all of the struggles in life. So lead therapy definitely is something. But thanks again. The book is 50 States in My Sights. Like I said, go get it. It's you won't regret it. Appreciate you coming on. And then where can people get a hold of you? I know you're on all the socials.
Yeah, Instagram is highcaliber_NC. And then I have a website. It's highcaliberoc.com. So I'm still doing like the bi-coastal thing, but that's where you can find me.
Okay, well, thank you, Heather, for coming on. And to our sponsors, we want to thank all of you for your support. We really appreciate it. And until next time, folks.
Thank you.